just going, "You're not. No, it's not happening." And Jeff chatted with us and left us a CD of 5 songs.
Yeah.
And that 5 songs were Fairy Tales of San Francisco, When the Sun Goes Down, Dance Floor, Mardy Bum. You just... you listen to that and you're just like, fucking hell, what the fuck?
Hi Tim, welcome to Walls of Ears for Mixing Sheffield. Thanks for coming and doing this with us. So jumping straight in then, your career, starting off from, as we were talking before, £10 a gig to International Tour Manager of the Year.
It's quite a journey.
That's a nice little journey.
It is.
So where did it start for you then? Where did it start, Tim?
It started in Steve Chambers' bedroom and their cellar on, is it Lidget Lane?
Lidget Lane.
Lidget Lane. Your bands used to rehearse in your cellars, and Steve had a little Amstrad 4-track recorder that was a stereo and a double tape deck and a turntable and 4-track recording. And we recorded some demos.
Yeah.
And I sort of got a bit hooked.
So how does it start to progress from here?
James introduced me to this guy called John Strong.
Yeah.
Who had a band called the John Strong Band.
Yeah.
Who were a sort of bluesy type of folky band. They were touring that folk circuit in a Renault Master van that had been converted to fit the PA and everyone sitting in it. And so that was my first foray into touring, into what it was like on the road. And I'd been sent up to Sunderland, where New York Sound Company was based, and we prepped all the rig to put it in the van. At which time I was told I was driving as well as teching. So I was like, all right, yeah, fine. Put it all in a van, this big old 7.5 ton van, which only had quite a low sort of payload weight, and drove off down the M1 only to get pulled up and stopped by the transport police, who said, "You look a bit heavy, son." And they dragged me off and weighed me, and I was 4 tons overweight. Which is quite interesting, on my way to the first gig of the tour. Fortunately, it was at the Borderline Club in London, which was a small 300 capacity club, something like that. And we only needed monitors, so I just piled everything I needed in the truck. And I was about 50 kilos underweight then, and they let me go. So got to London, did the first gig, packed it all back in the truck, set off to the next gig, and the axle snapped.
Oh my God.
Those early gigs really set me up for that, because you're just thrown in and you've just got to deal with it. You can't shy away from it, because if you shy away from it, there's 300 kids who are going to have the gig cancelled and you'll never work again because you've not dealt with it. So, I was just of that mindset of like, don't matter what we have to do, we just have to make it work. But I suppose the next major step was I got a phone call. Well, my dad got a phone call actually, and took a message from me from a guy called Jean Bouvier, an American guy who phoned up and said, "Can Tim be in Milan on Friday?" And this was on Monday. And so my dad just scrolled a note down and left it in my file of facts. They were cool then. And then when I got home, I'd got a number to phone, an American number, and this name, and Milan Friday. So I phoned up, and this guy said, we got a tour, European tour. We need a sound guy. Can you be here on Friday? And I was like, yeah, sure. What's it doing? And he said it's an 8-week tour in Europe, in stadiums, supporting Bon Jovi. And I was like, yeah, fine. Didn't ask about money, didn't ask about anything, just got my ticket to get out there. So did 8 weeks with them, Bon Jovi, Van Halen, Ugly Kid Joe. And it was amazing, you know, the PA was just incredible. Like hundreds of white boxes floating in the air, and they had inflatable things that used to dance. And mixing through all that equipment that Bon Jovi were mixing through, you know. And again, their engineer, Bon Jovi's engineer, English guy, I forget his name as well, but he was, Tony, he was called.
Yeah.
Really cool guy. Just, you know, obviously knew I was nervous.
Yes.
You know, you could see it, and just really helped me out, you know, sat with me and
Did he?
talked me through it all. You know, said, if you need any help, you know, just let me know. You know, because this is not, the desk they used was a really old analog, very cool board. You know, it was like some sort of starship control panel.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I've got no idea. And he just talked me through it all. And it was incredible. First gig was just mind blowing.
Amazing.
To 50,000 people in Milan. It's like, fuck.
From sitting in Sheffield on Monday to that on the Friday.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And so after doing that,
so this job came up at the lead mill for a systems tech, and I went for it. Went and had an interview with Darren, and got the job, which was quite a shock. In hindsight, it's not really shocking because I've got loads of fucking experience.
Yeah.
But at the time, you know, I probably wasn't as confident as I could have been.
yeah,
And that was really great, you know, that time, because working at the lead mill was just a lot of fun.
yeah,
You know, we used to do gigs every weekend, and during the week I'd be fixing all the equipment and buying new stuff, and I ended up DJing a few nights as well, which was great fun.
And so was it after that? Is that when it really starts kicking off?
I got back into touring with bands, with Graham Wrench again.
Yeah.
So it was the first gigs I'd done for him, for his band, Seafruit.
Jeff Barradell, Alan Smythe, Joe Newman, some fairly big names. Some big names. So Joe Newman went on to Reverend and the Makers. Alan Smythe,
Two Fly,
you know, recorded the Monkees, one of the first.
Well, he did all their early demos.
Did all their early stuff, didn't he?
Yeah.
And obviously Jeff Barradell managing the Monkees.
Yeah. So you can see where the connection all lies. But that was a long time before the Monkees had probably even thought about music and instruments. But that's when I met John Barry around that time. Ended up working for a lot of American punk bands.
Yeah.
Rocket from the Crypt, Modest Mouse, Lovers Laughter, At the Drive-In, Russell Simmons, John Spencer Blues Explosion. Did a lot of these gigs.
At the Drive-In?
Yeah, well.
At the Drive-In, mate?
Yeah, they were awesome. Dave Cronin had phoned me up and said, we want you to do some stuff with At the Drive-In. They've already got an engineer, but he's shit. So can you just come and, oversee things for us? Which was, an interesting gig. It was in the Astoria. BBC were recording it.
Yeah.
Their engineer was not happy with me being there.
Wasn't he?
No. I went and stood with him and just, he was all right. He took stuff on board that I said, and I think in fairness to him, he was a little bit out of his depth in terms of like venue size.
Right.
So instead of battering him down about his mix, which was actually fine, he was struggling on stuff like room EQs and making the everything gel.
Yeah.
So that's what I did with him on that day.
I think it's really nice and encouraging to hear that as an approach, rather than just the other approach, which I've seen a fair bit of in my, But maybe that's got something to do with you getting to the position that you did, because you've obviously made a lot of friends.
Well, yeah, I'd like to think so. I mean, a lot of people from my early career I still speak to and still work with. Yourself.
Yeah.
We still do bits together occasionally, and Mike Gray from Skin, who was one of the first bands that I worked for, I still work for him to this day, And he put something really lovely in the latest album, actually. He's, a really lovely comment about good friend and always reliable.
Always reliable. That must have come in handy and been a key selling point for you to get the job with someone like the Monkees. Although, didn't you come in right at the start of the Monkees?
I was in right at the start of the Monkees, yeah. Just before the Monkees, I'd been working for a large rock band.
The Darkness, was it?
The Darkness, yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting time. And I was still doing a lot of work with these American rock bands.
Yeah.
And along the way, I'd met this guy called Andy Shillito.
Yeah.
It was quite early on when I met Andy. He was doing the support band when I was touring with the Human League as system tech, and I was really cool to him while he was there. He was struggling with big rooms, and I helped him out. And I was doing the usual sort of attitude. Oh, let's get it done. It'll be sound. It'll be good. And he remembered that, and so we passed jobs to each other along the way. And then when the Darkness all blew up, he got the job as their monitor engineer. And I was just chuffed to bits for him. I was just blown away, just like, this is amazing, Andy. This is going to be incredible for you. Went to see him when they played up in Newcastle, I think it was.
Yeah.
And on that night, he said to me, I think we're sacking the front of house guy, which is why I invited you up here. Yeah. And I was like, oh, cool. And he went, you're not getting that job. That's my job. You're getting this job. And I was like, awesome. Yeah. So, the following year, in March, I think it was. No, it was in February. They sacked their engineer, Pablo, and Andy got that job and phoned me up and said, you've got it. You're coming to America. Your first gig's in Cleveland. So
hello,
like,
Cleveland!
Yeah. Little bit scary, Never met the band. Certainly never mixed monitors for them. Turned up for the first gig, got everything set up, did the sound check, it was all fine. Got to the changeover time between the support band, which was the Wild Arts.
The Wild Arts?
I was supporting, and did all the line check, did all my instrument checks, everything was working. Got to Justin's vocal, nothing. Went and wiggled a few wires, changed channels. Got to the, changed loads of cables, tapped the channel on the desk, and it just came on really loud. And I was like, can't have that. Fuck, it's the desk. So all the time, the production managers just stood over me, just like that. And I'm just sweating. First gig, 2,000 people in America, huge rock band. It's all fucked. So changed the channel. Worked fine. Yeah. Said to Chris, the production manager, "It's all right, sound." I don't know whether he'd noticed that I was absolutely shitting myself inside, but I dealt with it, and the gig went fine, and it was all good. And I think that sealed the deal and also the fact that the band came off stage and just went, "That sounded fucking incredible." So it was scary at times. It was scary, We all did a lot of things that were, close to the bone, a bit naughty, but it was great. It was fun. And it was one of those rides where you've just got to go with it and just flow with it. And it was really an exciting ride, but very scary, and not something I'd ever want to repeat. So after that it was like, what do I do now? Yeah. What now? And in January of that year, me and Sam, my wife, we sort of sat at home and we'd decided I was going to stop touring. We both just thought, right, this is the time to call it a day. I think, we've done all right.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of said to a few people in Sheffield, I'm looking for, some work, just something locally. I don't want to do much. And I got a phone call from Karen, who was in the music scene around that time.
Karen Waskow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saying Jeff's looking for someone to look after his new band.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. Give him a call. So I phoned him up and I said, Karen said you're looking for someone. He said, oh, yeah. I don't know if, I can't pay you enough, I don't think, Tim. And I said, well, I'm looking for something just to tie me over, Jeff. So he said, I'll tell you what, I'll come over and I'll bring you some music and we'll have a chat. And so he came over and sat in my kitchen. Sam was scowling at him, basically saying, "You can fuck off.
Okay, you're not
you
going
are
back
not,
on." So
not. She was scowling. Well, both of us probably just going, "You're not. No, it's not happening." And Jeff chatted with us and left us a CD of 5 songs.
Yeah.
And that 5 songs were Fairy Tales of San Francisco, When the Sun Goes Down, Dance Floor, Mardy Bum. You just you listen to that and you're just like, fucking hell, what the fuck? You can't turn that down.
No.
You know, and Sam, we listened to it together and we both just went, we have to do this. We have to try it out and see what happens. So that was the start.
That's a special moment. Do you know when you first listened to them? Did it literally bowl you over? Were you like?
You knew instantly. Those 5 songs were just. I knew they were going to be massive.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff would. He'll kill me for saying this. Jeff was paying me 30 quid a gig to do the Monkeys back then. But when you have such belief in a band, you know, I've met the boys as well, and they're nice young kids.
Yeah.
You know, and I was probably a cocky, arrogant bastard at that point. You know, I'd just come off tour with the Darkness. You know, I was the big man.
Yeah.
You know, and they were young kids, and I was just like, yeah, you know, I'll do your band. Yeah, it'll be all right.
Yeah.
But inside, I knew they were destined for huge things. You can't listen to those 5 songs, those 4 songs that I just mentioned, and not know they've got something special.
So, what was it like working with them then? What, you know, from that, did it feel special from the start?
The first couple of gigs I did were in Sheffield. We did what used to be the Fez Club.
Yeah.
We did there. They were supporting Tom Veck.
Yeah.
They had more people in than Tom Veck, and I was like, they've got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
That's weird. And then we did the Harley, and it was fucking rammed. And I just thought, they've got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
And they all knew the words, these kids. And the next gig we had was in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And so we drove up to Glasgow in my car.
Yeah.
Which was a Mitsubishi Shogun then, in Jamie's car. And I don't know if Jeff's car. We went up in cars basically, piled all the backlining we could fit in and shared whatever was up there. And on the way up, I was thinking to myself, this will be a right wake-up call for them. There'll be fucking 3 blokes and a dog, and it'll be shit, and we'll drive home. And it wasn't. It was 300 people in the barfly in Glasgow screaming back all the words. And it all went a bit crazy, you know. And from the inside, it didn't feel too crazy, you know. It felt, we knew it was happening, you know. We knew it was starting to kick off, and you know, we were just doing the gigs, you know. They were getting bigger each time we went out. I went from doing sound and tour managing to just tour managing, which was a bit of a surprise for Jeff. He thought I was going to go the other way.
Yeah.
And we built up a crew. Nigel Reeks came back into the fold as backline tech. John Ashton was brought on board initially as backline tech, but then took my job as front of house. Mm-hmm. And yeah, to start with, it was just the 3 of us, you know, in a van with the boys up and down the country, you know, in and out of Europe, just all starting to build up. And then I think it was October when they released Dance Floor. And it went to it went to number 1. I think we were at the Plug that day when it went to number 1.
I can't imagine what it's like. You know, it's been like a Beatles experience. I mean,
very much so. You know, we've had to run away from fans. I've had to be quite aggressive with protecting the boys. Certainly early on, like those early gigs. A lot of the gigs we did, I remember one at Wakefield at the Escobar. There was no barrier, and there was 200 kids going fucking mental, like properly mental. And Alex was getting the mic stand knocked into his teeth. Not aggressively, you know. People weren't doing it nastily, but they were jostling around, and it was happening. So I had to get in amongst it, and so I was security for the band. I was merch seller. I was lights. I was sound. I was tour manager. You know, whatever needed doing. But I was literally stood holding the crowd back at several gigs. And it was that gig at Wakefield was just insane. You know, there were footprints on the ceiling. It was a low ceiling, but there were footprints on the ceiling where kids had been crowd surfing and upside down and there were loads of record company executives that were turning up, who were sweaty at the end of gigs, going, "That was amazing! That was the best thing I've ever done." And you're just like, you're a 50-year-old man. What the fuck are you doing? So yeah, it was a mind-blowing journey, and you know, we went from doing 200 capacity clubs to playing at Reading and Leeds early on the stage, and the tent was full. No one could get near. If you weren't there an hour and a half before they were due on, you weren't seeing it. And we were sat backstage, and it was quite funny because we were all just having a beer, you know, chilling out. And these Land Rovers kept turning up, and golf buggies kept turning up with more and more security. And you're just like, what the fuck's going on? And they just kept feeding in these security, and you're like, what? And then I went and looked on stage, and the tent was just stupid full. And somebody took a photograph from outside the tent and emailed it to me subsequently. And it was about 50 people deep outside the tent.
Oh my God.
It was just ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Oh God, it's that hype. I mean...
We weren't making any of that hype. That was just all coming from the fans. So it wasn't hype. It was real. It was just, you know, it was what was happening.
And it's not been manufactured, has it? This is the thing.
None of it.
I know you've not, like the band, they've not really done a lot of interviews.
Early on, we were turning interviews down.
Yeah.
We were just, you know, Jeff would come to me and go, "Oh, so and so wants to do this," and Al would just say, "No." And I'd be like, "What? Are you fucking mental?" He'd be just like, "No, I don't want to do it." They didn't want to be stars. They didn't want to be rock stars. Well, they did, but they didn't. They wanted it at their own pace.
Yeah.
You know, it was a big fucking change for them, and we had to protect them a little bit from it. You know, we had to make those decisions that were sometimes quite tough. Certainly for management, they had to make some really hard decisions, and they had to do what the band were asking rather than. I mean, Jeff managed them really well.
Yeah.
In them early days, and Ian McAndrew.
Yeah.
You know, he looked after them really well.
Yeah.
And just followed what their wishes were rather than pushing them into things that. If they'd have done that, I don't think the band would have survived.
There's a certain
Certainly not to the point where they are now.
No, that, like you say, that natural development. It does look like they've really done it on their own terms, and it does look they're still together and still solid, aren't they?
Pretty much. I mean, the only blip was Andy.
Yeah.
You know, when he left, that was really sad. He was going through a tough time.
Why did that happen, or is it?
I don't know the exact ins and outs of it. You know, I remember it happening.
Yeah.
We were in Spain.
Yeah.
And he'd been fine, and then I saw him a few hours later, and he was in bits, and just said, "I have to go home."
Yeah.
I'm not sure what had happened, but he was really struggling with something. He said, "I have to go home. I've got to go home.
Yeah.
I can't cope with it anymore."
Yeah.
And so we sent him home. And I went back to front of house, and John Ashton played bass for a couple of gigs, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And then we'd got a bit of a gap, about a week's gap, between finishing in Europe and going to America. And Andy said, "I can't go to America." He said, "I can't go." So, like, we all had some real big decisions to make, and we all searched for. You know, it wasn't just the band, it was Jeff and Ian and myself, and pretty much all of us involved were just trying to find a way of dealing with it so it could carry on. And so the guys said, we want Nick O'Malley to come and stand in.
Yeah.
And it was just temporary standing. There was no, it wasn't like we want to replace Andy.
Yeah.
It was, we want Nick to come out, he'll be great, he'll do it, it'll be awesome.
Yeah.
And Nick had broke his arm.
Yeah.
So we phoned Nick and said, Can you play? And he said, "I'll try." So he went and tried and came back and went, "I think I'll be alright."
Yeah.
So that week I spent getting visas for Nick, getting him a passport. He didn't have a passport. Didn't have a visa. Didn't have any of that. So we spent a whole week of just sorting it out so he could come.
Whilst he's
learning and making sure he can play with a broken wrist.
Oh my God.
And then we went to America, and during that tour, you know, we weren't sure what Andy was doing, and the guys got on really well with Nick, and there was a shift
Yeah.
You know, in certainly the boys on the road, of how they felt about what Andy had done.
Yeah.
And Nick ended up joining the band.
Yeah. You tour managing the Monkeys, and then you're at a stadium level now.
Yeah.
So you're at a stadium level. I can remember seeing you actually. I think it was at Manchester, watching you at the side of the stage, like giving Al his towel at the end of the gig, just thinking, mate, you've come a long way. I can remember seeing you just looking like that and just thinking, proud of you, mate.
Yeah, it's been a good journey, you know. It's been really good. And then I had to make the decision to give it all up.
When you just won International Tour Manager of the Year.
Yeah, that year
That
I'd won that.
Which is basic. That is the top of your game.
Pretty much. In the UK, definitely. You know, it's the best accolades you can get from, because it's voted for by people that you work with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's quite an achievement to do it, and I was a bit shocked, you know, when it happened. You just, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know where you are, but you know the list of people that were on that list with me, Andy Franks and all the other people. You know, I think Mike Darling was on that list that year. It was a big step, and then it happens, and they call your name, and you're like, shit, wow. And then, and then later on that year, I was in a hotel room in my suite.
Yeah.
You know, big suite, just come off posh hotel, just come off business class flight, going out that night with Puff Daddy, pool full of beautiful people below, all getting drunk, having fun, and I wanted to be at home.
Yeah.
I wanted to go home, back to kids and Sam. So
Yeah.
it was a bit of a weird realisation that I'd probably had enough.
Yeah.
Certainly for now. I mean, you never say never, and there may be a time in the future that I'd want to go back to it, but right now, and I want to be at home. I want to be with my family. I've missed too many birthdays. I've missed too many school plays. I've missed sports days. I've missed all those fun things, and I don't want to do it anymore. And so, you know, I'm not fully out of the music industry. I'm still doing bits, but none of it's touring. I couldn't. Yeah, I mean, you know, to get to that level, you have to be single-minded, really, and you can't. It's harsh, but I didn't think about my family as much as I thought about my career.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not what I wanted to be anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I'd done it enough, and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't face leaving the house and having them hanging on to me going, I don't want you to go. I couldn't face it anymore, so it was time. It was time. And I have to say, I'm the happiest I've been in a long time.
Stay in touch and keep me updated, bruv. And
Always, mate.
Tim,